Hello everybody, the Mage Tower was built for the first time in North America in WoW, which means that the class challenges went live. So I figured we'd talk about it. I have a lot of opinions on these things that we'll talk about at the end, but for this first part, I'm going to walk you through everything that's going on in this one in particular for Havoc Demon Hunter. It shares it with Survival Hunters and Arms Warriors and one other thing I don't remember. Oh, maybe Frost Mages? I don't remember quite what it was. But essentially, this is a challenge where you have to complete it. It's very difficult, and it gives you a artifact appearance, a really cool-looking artifact appearance for your weapons. But the problem is, it's difficult, and it's not quite what they said it would be. So in this first phase, I'm trying to kill Archmage Xylem. He casts Frostbolt. It does a ton of damage. You'll need to interrupt him. And then he will blink across this like little purple cross in the middle, which, by the way, will knock you back and deal damage. But if you're a Demon Hunter, you could double jump and dash over it, and it won't knock you back for it. But when he blinks, he'll put down all these frost shards, and they will do a ton of damage. They lock you in. If you walk into them, it'll one-shot you. And essentially, you can kill them, but if you're a Demon Hunter, you can double jump and dash over them, which is really nice, but you got to time that right, because if you don't, you'll dash into it and die instantly. I've had that happen several times now. But what you're doing is you're interrupting him before the Razor Ice, and then right after he casts it, as a Demon Hunter, you stun them, you use Chaos Nova, and it pops out all the health orbs from it, which heals you up. And then when he blinks, you dash over to him, and you CC him, which will keep him from casting Frostbolt. And it also means that you get to save your interrupt. I don't do it perfectly on this attempt every time, but if you get the rotation down this phase, it's very, very easy. It lasts until about 70%. I'm running a very particular build that is keeping me healed. I'm using the Demonic Talent, which is whenever I use I-Beam, it puts me into Metamorphosis, which of course gives me the Leech. Now, this phase is really annoying. He blinks away, and you have to go and find him. You can see him for a second after he blinks, but if you don't get to him immediately to stop, you just have to like get into his range, and it'll stop that phase. You will die in a couple seconds. It does a ton of damage. The dot that is going out, it's not a dot, it's just like a constant tick of damage, and you can kill those ads that are there, and they spawn a bubble which will protect you for a few seconds, but it depletes slowly over time. Then after you're doing that, he's casting Arcane Barrage, but then he'll cast Draw Power, which is a channeled ability. If he continues to channel it, every second he's doing it, he will gain a 10% damage boost, which is not ideal. You don't want any stacks from that, so you want to kind of interrupt it as soon as it happens. He'll usually cast like 2 Arcane Blasts, and then he will cast the shadow thing that you saw where you just dodge the orbs. You just focus on dodging them, and then he will cast the Draw Power. So you want to interrupt that immediately, either through your stun or if you're a Blood Elf, you do Arcane Torrent. You either do your interrupt, or I'm also using the stun, the additional stun that you have through talents. But then it goes right back into the frost phase, as you can see here, and it just kind of continues that idea from that first phase, except it is he jumps much further away, and you'll notice that I interrupt him. It's a little trick I learned. I interrupt him and move him a little bit closer when he's casting Frostbolt. That way, the relative distance isn't as much, and he'll do this a couple times before you want to hold on to your charges, your Fell Rush. You want one to kind of remain in your back pocket, essentially. So as soon as he dashes away this time, I'm going to make sure that I only get to him with 1 dash, because the next time he does it, he's going to once again do the stupid annoying phase with the little dudes and the bubbles and like the constant tick damage. It does a ton of damage. You want to get to him as soon as possible, but if he slows you, which you do get slowed over time while doing that, it's like nearly impossible to get to him, and you'll just die. So I try to move him into the center to prepare for that phase, keeping 2 Fell Rushes at any given time. The unfortunate thing is he casts Shadow Barrage there, and sometimes his abilities get a little out of whack, which is annoying. But he casts Shadow Barrage there, which you just have to dodge, and sometimes it spawns right on top of him. You have to be very, very careful with that. Focus on not dying, and you'll be fine. But you see it goes back into this phase with the Arcane Annihilation. Dash to him immediately and do that. Now, you probably saw the second time it did Arcane Annihilation, I used Metamorphosis to get to him. That's a nice little trick. I don't think that it's necessary, but it is a cool little trick that I've learned. I picked up Delusions of Grandeur, the shoulders, and I have a Convergence of Fate. So it means that I can get my Metamorphosis up almost exactly when that phase is about to happen every time. So my rotation on it is pretty good. That means I could be further out and not have to worry about dying in that phase, because that's the phase that kills me the most when I'm not using the Metamorphosis trick to get to him. But the problem is I just got Metamorphosis back up right now, and I want to use it to him because he's going to do the Arcane Annihilation once again. So I want to use it to him to get to him so I don't die, because otherwise I would absolutely die here. There's no way I would have been able to get to him. Maybe if I did my Vengeful Retreat, but it would have been close. So instead of risking it, I meted. But the problem is now that I don't have Metamorphosis for the next phase, because this isn't just a one phase, it's got 2 phases. If this was all it was, it would be super easy. I would have been done with it 10 times over by now, because I can consistently get into the second phase. It drops you out of combat, and it's going to be a weird fight. So there are ads, so you want some damage in order to kill them, and then there's a big dude that it's a rush. It's a DPS race that you have to kill him in. So you have a moment getting out of combat to change your talents, to change your gear, and then try to kill him. He'll put a big thing on the ground underneath him, and it'll slowly grow. We've seen this mechanic in WoW several times. I don't have him positioned correctly here, but even if I did, I don't quite have the damage to do this phase, and I'm trying something different on this go-around to try to eke out just a tiny bit more damage to see how it would go, which is at the expense of life. So unfortunately, it's not quite going to work, but he'll cast the Seed of Darkness. You'll see a channel. You don't want to interrupt it because you want him to stay over there, because these ads will spawn. You kill the ads real quick, or as quickly as you can. You could stun them, which is really nice, and you just blow them up. Now, I'm using the stabilizers, the bracers, which increases the throw glaive damage, which got buffed in 7.2, so they're really, really good for this because it's 3 targets. It's perfect target amount for that legendary. But you want to kill them before they get to him, because they heal him for a stupid amount of HP. It's like 20% HP for each ad that gets to him. And if one gets to him, you're not going to do it. I try to pop Lust and everything, but you see that the stuff is growing on the ground far too much. I could have moved him more to the edge. That would have helped, right? So there's like improvements that I can make here, and I know that I can do this. I know that I'm close. I just don't quite have the damage in the second phase. I'm going to have to change talents around for it a little bit, and I've burned myself out on this essentially. So let's talk about what I think of these challenges. This one in particular, because this is the only one that I've done, though I have watched the videos on all the others to get kind of an idea of what people are doing. I've watched some streamers do their tank ones, and those looked, I guess, interesting. But I have massive problems with the system because it's not what they said it would be. They said it would be a class challenge. It's not a class challenge, because you can't have a class challenge if it's shared with other classes. And from here on, all of the rest of the footage is just other attempts that I've done. You'll see many mistakes made, but you'll kind of see the learning process here. So it can't be a class challenge if you have multiple classes, because you can't build that one encounter around one class. For example, if it was a Havoc Demon Hunter challenge in particular, you could have a lot of platforming, which is something that WoW doesn't necessarily do very often, because the moving mechanics aren't as good as in, say, like WildStar, where you have a double jump by default and you have a dash that you can do. But in WoW, the only class that really has that kind of mobility is the Demon Hunter, with double jump and wings and dash. So what if they just had a fight which had multiple platforms and you had to move across the different platforms, and it was similar to the Kirin Tor dailies where you have to get to the item and you're like dashing through the orbs and whatnot. If they had something like that, where you're going to the different platforms and you're killing things as quickly as possible, maybe you're having to use specific abilities, like using your Metamorphosis in order to get to a platform that's really far away, and you have to save it for that one because it's got the leap on it. Like, that would have been way more intriguing, and that's what I was expecting, because that's what they said it was going to be. They said it was going to be a challenge of your class. It's going to prove how good you are at your class, but this is not the case here. This is how good you are at these encounters, because this is not designed for your class specifically. Because if a survival hunter is doing this one that I'm doing in the background, I have no idea how they're going to do it. I have no idea how an arms warrior is going to do this. But somehow they're a part of this as well, and that's how they manage to get their artifact appearance. I don't know if they have cheaty methods to get through some of the mechanics like demon hunters do, like being able to double jump over the ice walls or being able to jump over the beams. I just don't think you can do that with those classes. I guess the survival hunter could probably like grapple themselves or whatever they do to the boss once they've killed the ice stuff, but they can't jump over it, you know? There's no way to do that. So it just seems to me like they went the lazy route here. They didn't make a class challenge, they made a challenge for classes, and there is a pretty big difference. And to top it all off, the better gear you have, the easier it is. Now, I understand the design aspect behind that. It means that as the expansion goes on, they do not have to nerf it. It will naturally get easier because people will be getting better gear. People who have, let's just ballpark like 9, 20 item level, will be able to do this in, I don't know, let's say like at the end of summer, we'll be able to do this way easier than the people who are trying to do it for the first time ever, because our item level is roughly 900 if you're thinking you can do it. I'm 901, though I don't have optimized stat balances. So with that design philosophy, it means that you do not have to nerf it because you're just naturally going to get better. Not only are you going to get better at it by doing it constantly, but you're going to be getting better gear, and that solves its own issue. The problem is it also creates a new issue of it not necessarily being a challenge anymore. It's not something that is difficult to get because you are because you need to be good at your class. It's something that's difficult to get because you don't have the gear. So again, they said that it was going to be a test of the classes. It's not. It's a test of how good you are at this encounter and what kind of gear level you have for this encounter. And maybe that's fine and dandy. And I actually don't really have an issue with that design philosophy just in general, but they didn't communicate it that way. So my expectation did not meet the reality of the situation, which meant that I was disappointed in this design concept, in this encounter. I think it's a cool idea. They just needed to communicate it properly, and they didn't do that. And not to mention the fact that they didn't test it. They didn't test it publicly, which is probably for the best, right? They wanted to keep it a secret, and I understand the reasons behind that. I'm totally okay with it. But the issue that obviously arises there is the same thing that happens in, say, you know, Mythic Gul'dan when that got released, and they didn't really test it on the PTR, is that there was a massive bug that was happening that they immediately fixed once Exorcist ran into it and reported it. They got back online. The bug was fixed. They were good to go. They still got world first, but there was still a big bug that prevented them from killing the boss. And that's what happens when you don't test things publicly. There's going to be big bugs. And in fact, with this encounter that you're seeing, there is several bugs that I've ran into. Sometimes he will not be turned the right way when he's doing the shadow stuff. He'll be turned a completely different direction than what the shadow stuff is actually coming at you. And sometimes it will all just spawn on top of him and just like instantly kill you, which I've had happen several times. I haven't had many other people experience that, but it's something that I've had happen, which is really annoying. I've had it happen where after he casts the ice thing and I get out of it and I'm over by him and I've interrupted him several times, I'm still taking damage from the thing that he put on the ground, but I'm not in it anymore. It's buggy and it doesn't work really well, which has wasted my time doing it, which means I didn't get as many attempts in on the final phase that I wanted to do. And I've just gotten frustrated with the whole thing, and I've given up for now. I will come back to it. I will do it. I've just given up for now. And I think that's okay. You know, it's okay to not get it immediately. I wasn't expecting to get it immediately, but the fact that I'm so close to getting it is the frustrating thing. And it's going to feel very nice when I finally do kill it, and I do get my weapon appearance. But at this point in time, it's also okay for me to feel frustrated. It's also okay for me to not enjoy what I'm doing because, again, when I finally do it, I will think that the whole thing is worth it. But this is essentially at the end of the day, another symptom of a root problem that they've had in design with this patch that if slowly crept out. It's rearing its ugly head as we get further into 7.2, and I really hope we don't continue to see this trend because 7.2 is actually really good. They just have some weird design decisions they've made, such as the challenge itself costs 100 nether shards each time you do it. I initially had a huge problem with that because before this week, when we started getting a ton of nether shards from the invasions that just started, and doing nether shards when they fixed the giant ship farming that you can do in the Broken Shore, you couldn't really get a whole lot of nether shards per hour if you wanted to farm them, and you were basically forced to be using or to make the choice of whether you wanted to do the class challenge or try to get gear off of the vendor, the Kadala essential vendor. But the problem is that there wasn't enough nether shards coming in to do both, and now there is, so I don't have a problem with that. But that was a design problem until they fixed that farming method on the Broken Isles. And obviously, or on the Broken Shore, and obviously adding the invasions really helped because that gives you like several hundred per quest that you're doing, and you can do all of the quests in the zone when the invasion is happening. So you can get like several thousand shards. Because it only costs 100 to do the Mage Tower thing, it's actually fairly nice because, you know, you get 10 attempts out of 1,000 shards. It's pretty good. I think I've put in maybe 6,000. No, that's way too much. I've probably put in like 4,000 shards into this. I've probably done about 40 attempts because some of them were super short and I died immediately, and others I've gone super long on. So it's just kind of it's all relative in the end. But the fact that they had to fix the shard farming in the Broken Shore to begin with, and just the like little tiny things that have popped up here and there because of those design decisions, it felt like it took the wind out of the sails to 7.2 for me. And wiping constantly on this encounter, while frustrating, and I understand that I just don't quite have the gear, even though people who are lower gear than me have been able to do it. Maybe I needed different legendaries, or maybe use a different combination of legendaries, which I've tried, and some just work better for me than the others because of my playstyle. It's just, I feel like I'm slightly off base on how to get to the end of the fight, DPS-wise in particular. Because if I'm not using my bracers, I can't kill the ads fast enough. If I'm trying to take defensive cooldowns, or defensive talents, I don't have the DPS to kill him quick enough. So it's kind of annoying. Maybe I'll find a better way to do it. Maybe someone will find a really good combination of legendaries that I'll try out. But hopefully you've learned something from this video. Maybe you've learned a strategy that you haven't thought of before, like interrupting him and bringing him towards the center during the frost phases after, you know, that second arcane annihilation phase, because, you know, being able to get to him a lot quicker because you're closer to the center is really, really nice. But I've noticed a lot of people don't do that because they don't think that you can move him because he's going to keep casting. But if he's casting Frostbolt, he does get locked out of the frost ability for a couple seconds. But let me know if you guys have been doing your class challenges and whether or not you're enjoying them. How far did you get? Have you finished it? If you have, congratulations. It's very difficult. A lot of people are complaining about them. I think they're fine. I just don't think they're what they should have been. And to me, that's disappointing. And with that being said, we shall see you guys next time.